I was 24 years old, paying my own tuition, and sitting in advanced heat transfer when my phone buzzed for the fourth time. It was my mother. I stepped into the hallway, expecting an emergency, but she did not even say hello. "I have withdrawn you from school," she said, her voice ice cold. She thought she was saving me. She did not realize she had just committed a crime against the wrong person. My name is Isabella Hayes, and until 10 minutes ago, my biggest problem was the differential equation for thermal conductivity scrawled across the chalkboard in room 304. The lecture hall for advanced heat transfer smelled like overheating laptops, wet wool, and the specific, high-stress sweat of engineering seniors realizing they might not graduate on time. Outside the window, the Oregon autumn was doing its best to drown the city of Briar Glen, painting the campus of Redwood Valley University in shades of gray rain and brown mud. Inside, Dr. Aris was tapping his chalk against the slate, explaining the nuances of heat flux vectors. I was focused. I was taking notes. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Then my phone buzzed against my thigh. I ignored it. I was a serious student, the kind who sat in the second row, not the back. I was 24 years old, paying my own way, and I treated every lecture hour like it cost exactly what the tuition breakdown said it cost, which was roughly $80 a minute. I was not going to waste $80 on a text message. It buzzed again. Long, insistent vibrations that rattled the wood of the desk. I shifted, sliding my hand into my pocket to silence it without looking. But before I could engage the mute switch, it buzzed a third time, and then a fourth. The rhythm was frantic. It was the rhythm of an emergency. "Doctor," Aris stopped writing. He did not turn around immediately. He just held the chalk against the board, a cloud of white dust settling around his knuckles. The silence that fell over the room was heavy, awkward, and pointed directly at me. 30 heads turned. I felt the heat rise up the back of my neck, burning hotter than any theoretical transfer we were studying. "Is there an issue, Ms. Hayes?" "Doctor?" Aris asked, not looking at me. "I am so sorry," I whispered. I grabbed my bag, not bothering to zip it, and scrambled over the legs of the guy sitting next to me. I burst out into the hallway, the heavy door clicking shut behind me, sealing off the warmth of the classroom. The corridor was empty and cold, lined with lockers and bulletin boards advertising study abroad programs I would never take. I pulled the phone out. The screen lit up with a single word: Mom. My stomach dropped. My mother, Diane Wells, did not call for casual chats. She did not call to ask how my day was or if I was eating enough vegetables. If she was calling 4 times in a row in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, someone was dead. That was the only logical conclusion. My father had a heart attack. My brother had crashed his car. The house had burned down. I slid my thumb across the screen and pressed the phone to my ear. "Mom, is everything okay? What happened?" There was no greeting. There was no hesitation. Her voice came through the speaker clear, sharp, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was the voice she used when she was returning a steak at a restaurant. The voice that brooked no argument. "I have withdrawn you from school," she said. "Pack your things. You are coming home today." I stopped walking. I stood there in the middle of the hallway, staring at a poster for a blood drive, trying to process the syntax of her sentence. It made no sense. It was like she had spoken to me in a language I had never heard. "What?" I asked, my voice sounding thin in the empty corridor. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I spoke to the dean's office this morning," she continued, her tone breezy, as if she were discussing a change in a hair appointment rather than the destruction of my academic career. "We filed the paperwork an hour ago. It is done. I told them you are having a crisis, a mental health episode. I told them you are not fit to be there right now." The blood drained from my face. My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "A crisis? Mom, I am in the middle of a heat transfer lecture. I have a 3.9 GPA. I am perfectly fine. You cannot just withdraw me. I am 24 years old. Oh, Isabella, stop it, she snapped, the facade of concern slipping just enough to reveal the irritation underneath. You are not fine. You have been sounding distant for months, distant and erratic. I told them about the panic attacks. I have never had a panic attack in my life, I said, my voice rising. That is not what the documentation says, she replied. The world tilted slightly to the left. Documentation. She had documentation. What documentation? I demanded. Doctor, Evans wrote a very compelling letter, she said. Doctor. Evans was our family practitioner back home. A man who had not seen me in 4 years and who owed my father a significant amount of money from a golf club investment gone wrong. You forged a medical letter? I asked, the shock beginning to give way to a cold, hard knot of fury in my chest. Mom, that is fraud. You cannot do that. I am your mother, she said, as if that title superseded federal law. I am doing what is best for the family, and right now, the family needs you here, not wasting time in Oregon getting a degree that you are never going to use. We have talked about this, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I am going to use it. I have job offers pending. I am graduating in 2 months. Evan needs you, she cut in. And there it was. The real reason. It was never about my health. It was never about me. It was always about Evan, my older brother, the golden boy, the one who had failed out of 3 colleges and started 4 businesses, all of which had quietly imploded under the weight of his incompetence and my parents' bottomless checkbook. Evan started his new venture, she said, her voice softening into that reverent tone she reserved exclusively for him. It is going to be big. Isabella, really big, a logistics firm, but the books are a mess. He needs someone he can trust to set up the accounts, manage the overhead. We cannot trust outsiders. You know that. You are good with numbers. You can come home, get him organized, and maybe in a year or 2, if you still want to finish school, we can talk about it. I am not a bookkeeper, I said. I am a mechanical engineer. You are a daughter, she corrected. And right now, you are being incredibly selfish. Evan is under so much pressure. He asked for you specifically. He said, Mom, get Isabella home. She will know how to fix this. He is counting on you. I do not care, I said. Silence. The kind of silence that usually preceded an explosion. Excuse me? She whispered. I said I do not care. I repeated, measuring every word. I am not coming home. I am not fixing Evan's books. And I'm certainly not withdrawing from this university. You have no right to do this. I pay my own tuition. I pay my own rent. My name is on the lease. My name is on the billing statement. You have no authority here. I have every authority, she shouted, her voice cracking through the speaker. I am your mother. Do you think that school cares about your little independence routine? When a concerned parent calls and says their child is a danger to themselves, they listen. They prioritize liability. Isabella, I sent the letter. I authorized the withdrawal. It is already in the system. Your key card probably does not even work anymore. You are insane, I said. I am protecting you, she screamed. You are clearly not thinking straight. This is exactly why you need to come home. You are hysterical. I will be there on Saturday with the truck to collect your things. Be packed. Do not come here, I said. I will see you Saturday, she said. And Isabella, do not try to fight this. You will only embarrass yourself. They have the medical records now. If you try to stay, you will just look like a patient refusing treatment. Be a good girl. Go pack. The line clicked dead. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. For a moment, I could not move. I could not breathe. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. The sheer scale of the violation was paralyzing. It was not just that she had called the school. It was the precision of the strike. She had not just asked them to send me home. She had weaponized the administrative bureaucracy against me. She had created a narrative. Isabella is sick. Isabella is unstable. and inserted it into my permanent file. She treated me like I was 14 years old. She treated me like an appendage of the family, a resource to be deployed whenever Evan needed someone to clean up his mess. She thought she could just reach across state lines and pluck me out of my life because she decided I was needed elsewhere. I lowered the phone and looked at the screen. The call had lasted 3 minutes and 42 seconds. 3 minutes to dismantle 4 years of hard work. A group of sophomores walked past me, laughing about a party, holding coffees. They looked so normal. They had no idea that the ground had just opened up beneath my feet. I took a deep breath. The air in the hallway smelled of floor wax and rain. My first instinct was to cry. That was what the old Isabella would have done. The Isabella who wanted her mother's approval, who spent holidays mediating between my father's indifference and my brother's tantrums. But that Isabella had stayed in that classroom. The woman standing in the hallway was someone else. I felt a coldness settle over me. It started in my chest and spread to my fingertips. It was not fear, it was clarity. She had said she withdrew me. She said she used a medical letter. She said she used her authority as a mother, but I was not a minor. I had not signed a power of attorney. I had not signed a FEAR PA waiver granting them access to my academic records. If the school had processed a withdrawal based on a phone call from a parent for a 24-year-old independent student, they had not just made a mistake, they had broken the law. And if my mother had forged a doctor's signature, she had committed a felony. I put my phone in my pocket. I did not go back into the classroom to get my bag. I did not care about the heat transfer notes anymore. I had a different kind of problem to solve. I pushed open the heavy double doors of the engineering building and stepped out into the biting wind. The campus of Redwood Valley University was sprawling and green, nestled against the foothills of the Cascades. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my cheeks. Leaves, wet and brown, plastered themselves to the pavement, squishing under the heels of my boots. I walked fast. My destination was the administration building, a brutalist concrete fortress on the other side of the quad. "Do not let them do this," I whispered to myself. The words were snatched away by the wind. Not this time. As I crossed the main plaza, my path took me past the newest addition to the campus, Innovation Hall. It was a stunning structure, all glass and steel, reflecting the gray sky like a jagged mirror. It housed the new robotics labs and the student startup incubator. It had opened 6 months ago to great fanfare. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had been on the local news. The university president had given a speech about the future, about the generosity of the donors who made it possible. I stopped for a second, just a split second, to look at it. Most students walked past it and saw a building. They saw a place to study, a place to grab coffee at the cafe on the ground floor. My mother saw it, if she even knew it existed, as a waste of money. Another part of the useless education I was pursuing. But when I looked at Innovation Hall, I did not just see a building. I saw the HVAC system I had consulted on during the design phase. I saw the steel beams, and more importantly, I saw the funding structure. My mother thought I was a broke student living off student loans and a meager paycheck from a campus job. She thought she held the purse strings because she and my father had cut me off 3 years ago to teach me a lesson about loyalty. She did not know about grandmother's trust. She did not know that when my grandmother passed away 5 years ago, she had bypassed my father, whom she correctly identified as a spineless enabler, and my brother, whom she correctly identified as a parasite, and left the bulk of the family legacy to me. But she had done it quietly, a blind trust, managed by a firm in Seattle that answered only to me. My mother thought the anonymous donor, listed on the plaque inside the lobby of Innovation Hall, was some tech billionaire from Silicon Valley. She had no idea that the largest individual donor the university had seen in a decade was the same girl she just tried to drag home to do her brother's bookkeeping. I stared at the glass facade of the building. My building. They wanted to play power games? They wanted to talk about who owned what, and who had the right to be here. I turned away from Innovation Hall and resumed my march toward the administration building. My boots hit the pavement with a heavy, rhythmic thud. I was not going there to beg for my spot back. I was not going there to cry and explain that my mommy was mean. I was going there to confirm a crime, and once I confirmed it, I was going to burn their entire little scheme to the ground. The wind howled, but I did not feel the cold anymore. I was already burning. The office of the registrar was located on the ground floor of the administration building, a place that felt designed to drain the human spirit. The moment I pushed through the heavy glass doors, the air changed. It stopped smelling like rain and autumn leaves and started smelling like old toner. Dust heating up on computer vents, an industrial carpet cleaner. It was the scent of bureaucracy. There was a line. Of course, there was always a line. 3 students were ahead of me, shifting their weight from foot to foot, clutching add-drop forms and looking miserable. Under normal circumstances, I would have taken a number from the red dispenser and waited my turn. I would have scrolled through my phone. I would have been polite, but these were not normal circumstances. I walked past the number dispenser. I walked past the line of students. I ignored the indignantly whispered, "Hey," from a guy in a varsity jacket. I walked straight up to the counter where a young woman with tired eyes was typing slowly on a keyboard that looked like it had survived the 90s. She looked up, startled by my sudden proximity. Her name tag read Hara, student assistant. She could not have been more than 19. "Excuse me," she said, her voice uncertain. "You need to pull a ticket." I placed my hands flat on the counter. The laminate was cool under my palms. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The fury inside me had distilled into something heavy and solid, like a lead weight in my stomach. "I do not have time for a ticket, Sarah," I said. "I need to speak to a full-time registrar, immediately." "I can help you," she said, reciting her script. "What is the issue regarding? Transcripts? Enrollment verification?" "Identity theft," I said. The typing stopped. The student behind me in line stopped rustling his papers. "Someone has accessed my student portal without my authorization," I continued, keeping my eyes locked on hers. "They have filed a request to withdraw me from this university based on fraudulent medical documentation. I need to know who logged in, when they did it, and I need to stop the process before it cycles through the mainframe." Sarah stared at me. The script had not prepared her for this. She blinked, once, twice. I do not think I can access that level of—" "Then get someone who can," I said. She scrambled off her stool and disappeared behind a partition. I stood there, listening to the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm that contradicted the stillness of my posture. I checked my watch. It had been 18 minutes since my mother called. 18 minutes since my life had been hijacked. A moment later, a woman in a gray cardigan emerged. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with the weary, skeptical expression of someone who had heard every excuse a college student could invent. Her name tag read, "Mrs. Gable, Senior Records Officer." "You are claiming a fraudulent withdrawal?" Mrs. Gable asked, not looking at me yet. She was logging into her terminal, her fingers flying across the keys with practiced apathy. "Name and ID number." "Isabella Hayes," I said. I recited my student ID number, a string of 9 digits I had memorized 4 years ago. Mrs. Gable typed it in. She hit enter. I watched her face. I expected annoyance. I expected her to tell me that I probably just forgot I clicked a button, or that my parents had the right to view my grades. I expected the usual condescension administrators reserve for students. Instead, her hands froze. Her eyes widened slightly behind her reading glasses. She leaned closer to the screen, reading something I could not see. The apathy vanished, replaced by a sudden, sharp alertness. It was the look of someone who realizes they are holding a live grenade. She looked up at me. Then she looked back at the screen. Then she looked at me again, searching my face. "Isabella Hayes," she repeated. It was not a question anymore. It sounded like a verification code. "Yes," I said. I pulled my driver's license from my pocket and slid it across the counter. "That is me." Mrs. Gable did not touch the ID. She did not need to. She had seen something on that screen that told her exactly who I was, and whatever it was, it made her very nervous. "Miss Hayes," she said, her voice dropping to a hushed, professional tone. "Please, come with me." She unlatched the swinging gate at the end of the counter. The students in line watched in confused silence as I was ushered into the back, past the rows of filing cabinets and into a small, glass-walled office. Mrs. Gable closed the door and gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. "What is going on?" I asked. "Is the withdrawal in the system?" She sat behind her desk and typed rapidly for a few seconds before turning the monitor so I could see it. "At 10:15 this morning," she said, pointing to a timestamp on the screen. "A user logged into the student portal using your credentials. They navigated to the registrar forms section and submitted a request for emergency medical withdrawal. They attached a PDF file titled Medical Necessity Letter, signed by a doctor, Evans." I looked at the screen. Seeing it in black and white made it real in a way the phone call had not. Status: pending dean approval. "I was in class at 10:15, I said. "I was in advanced heat transfer. My professor takes attendance. I can prove I was not at a computer." "The IP address used for the login," Mrs. Gable said, tapping a different line of text, "is located in Tacoma, Washington." "That is where my parents live," I said. "And the password used was correct," she noted. I closed my eyes for a second. The password. I knew exactly what it was. It was probably Bandit 1, the name of the golden retriever we had when I was 12. I had set up that account freshman year. Back when I still trusted them. Back before I realized that privacy was something I had to fight for. I had never changed it because I never used the portal for anything other than checking final grades. I paid my tuition through a separate, secure system. "It was my mother," I said. "She guessed the password. It was an old one, but that does not matter. I am standing here telling you that I did not authorize this. The medical letter," Mrs. Gable began, "is a forgery," I cut in. "I have not seen Dr. Evans in 4 years. I am not having a mental health crisis. I am the victim of a cybercrime committed by my family to force me to return home." Mrs. Gable looked at me. She looked at the pending status on the screen. She seemed to be weighing the risk. On one side, a frantic parent with a doctor's note. On the other side, the student herself, standing in the office, looking perfectly sane and incredibly angry. But there was something else. I could see it in the way she kept glancing at the top right corner of my profile on the screen, where a small, red flag icon sat next to my name. "I need you to cancel this request," I said, my voice steady. "Right now, I need you to purge the document from my file so it does not remain part of my permanent record. And then I need you to lock my account." "Lock it?" she asked. "Hard lock," I said. "Two-factor authentication is not enough. I want a note on my file. No changes, no inquiries, no document releases without me physically present in this office with government-issued identification. I want a verbal password set up for phone inquiries. If the caller does not know it, you hang up. I do not care if they say they are the Pope. Do you understand?" Mrs. Gable nodded slowly. "We can do that. We have a protocol for students in sensitive domestic situations." She began typing again. I watched the cursor move. I watched her click reject on the withdrawal request. I watched the status change from pending to denied. "I am also flagging the account for security," she said, her fingers moving fast. "I am resetting your credentials now. You will receive a temporary password to your student email. You should change it immediately to something complex." "Thank you," I said. "However," she said, and her hands stopped moving. She looked up at me, and there was a strange, grim expression on her face. "There is a complication." "What complication?" I asked. "You just denied it." "I denied the electronic request," she said. "But the registrar is just the processing center. The dean of students has the final authority on medical leaves. And she hesitated, glancing toward the thin drywall that separated her office from the main corridor of the administrative suite. "And what?" I pushed. "Your mother is on the phone," Mrs. Gable said softly. "She is on hold with the dean's office right now. She called the main line 10 minutes ago demanding to speak to Dean Miller personally. She is escalating." My blood ran cold. Of course she was. Diane Wells did not just click a button and hope for the best. She managed the situation. She was probably charming the secretary right now, or threatening a lawsuit, or weeping, whatever the situation required. "She is on the line?" I asked. "I can see the active call log on the shared dashboard," Mrs. Gable said. "She is currently holding for the assistant dean." I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Through the wall, faintly, I could hear a voice, not the words, just the cadence. It was coming from the office next door, or perhaps 2 doors down. It was a high, sharp pitch. It was the sound of a woman who was used to speaking until everyone else stopped to listen. It was a sound that used to make me shrink. It was the sound of Sunday dinners where I was told my ambition was unseemly. It was the sound of the day they told me they were cutting off my tuition because I refused to change my major to business. But today, it did not make me shrink. It made me focus. "Where is the dean's office?" I asked. Mrs. Gable looked at me with genuine concern. "Miss Hayes, if you go in there while she is on the line." "She is trying to talk them into overriding you," I said. "She is trying to talk them into forcing the withdrawal. I need to be there." "It is down the hall," Mrs. Gable said, pointing a finger toward the left. "Suite 101, the glass doors at the end." "Thank you for the security update," I said. "Do not let anyone unlock this file." "I will not," she promised. She looked like she wanted to say something else, perhaps ask why my name had that red flag, or why I carried myself like I owned the place, but she stayed silent. I walked out of her office. I walked past the line of students who were still waiting. I walked down the long, carpeted corridor toward the double glass doors at the end. The voice grew louder as I approached. It was not coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from the open door of the receptionist's area in the dean's suite. The receptionist must have had it on speaker, or my mother was just yelling that loud. "Irresponsible to let her stay." I heard the tinny, distorted voice of my mother echo down the hall. "She is a danger to herself. I am faxing the liability waiver now." I tightened my grip on my backpack strap. I was not going to run. I was not going to hide. I was going to walk into that room, and I was going to end this. I reached for the handle of the dean's office door. It was cold steel. "Hello, Mother." I thought, let us see who actually runs this school. I pulled the door open. The transition from the hallway to the dean's suite was like stepping across an invisible tax bracket. The scuffed linoleum of the corridor ended abruptly, replaced by plush, navy blue carpet that swallowed the sound of my boots. The fluorescent flicker was gone, swapped out for warm, recessed lighting that made everyone look important and well-rested. The air here was different too. It did not smell like industrial cleaner and anxiety. It smelled of mahogany polish, fresh-cut lilies, and the distinct, quiet confidence of old money. This was the nerve center of Redwood Valley University. This was where the decisions were made, where the endowments were managed, and where problems were quietly suffocated before they could reach the press. And right now, the biggest noise in this sanctuary of silence was my mother. I could hear her before I even reached the main desk. Her voice was tinny and sharp, leaking out of the receiver that the woman behind the desk was holding a good 6 inches away from her ear. "I do not care what your protocol is." My mother's voice was distorted but unmistakable, vibrating with that specific frequency of entitlement she reserved for service workers and subordinates. "I am telling you she is unresponsive. She is likely wandering the campus in a fugue state. I am her mother, and I am demanding you authorize the withdrawal before she hurts herself or damages university property." The woman behind the desk was Marianne Klein. I knew her name. Though we had never officially met, Marianne was the executive assistant to the dean of students. But that title was a massive understatement. In reality, she was the gatekeeper. She was a woman in her late 40s with a bob cut so sharp it could cut glass, and a posture that suggested she had never slouched a day in her life. She was wearing a charcoal blazer that probably cost more than my first car. Marianne was staring at the phone with an expression of polite, frozen distaste, like she was holding a dead rodent by the tail. I walked further into the room. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of someone walking into a boxing ring they had built themselves. Marianne looked up. Her eyes were cool, gray, and assessing. They swept over me, taking in my wet raincoat, my wind-blown hair, and the distinct lack of a fugue state. She did not ask who I was. She did not ask if I had an appointment. Her gaze stopped on my face, and I saw the recognition click into place. It was instantaneous. It was the look of a woman who memorized names, faces, and financial portfolios for a living. She knew exactly who I was, and more importantly, she knew exactly what I was worth to this institution. My mother was still screaming on the line. "Are you listening to me? I said I am faxing the medical release. If anything happens to her, I will sue this school into the ground. I want her out of that dorm and back home by tonight." Marianne slowly brought the phone back to her ear. She did not break eye contact with me. "Ma'am," Marianne said. Her voice was calm, low, and terrifyingly steady. It cut through my mother's hysterics like a scalpel. "Don't you ma'am me," my mother snapped. "I want to speak to Dean Miller. I am tired of talking to secretaries." "Dean Miller is currently in a meeting with the Board of Trustees," Marianne lied smoothly. She stood up. She was tall, commanding, and she projected an aura of absolute authority. "But that is irrelevant, Mrs. Wells, because the situation you are describing does not exist." "Excuse me?" my mother demanded. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I am telling you that your assessment of the student's condition is factually incorrect," Marianne said. She gestured slightly toward me, an invitation to step closer to the desk. "Miss Hayes is currently standing directly in front of me." There was a short, stunned silence on the other end of the line. "That is impossible," my mother sputtered, recovering quickly. "She is probably confused. She does not know where she is. Put her on the phone. Let me talk to her. I will calm her down." I shook my head at Marianne. No, Marianne did not hand me the phone. She did not even flinch. "Miss Hayes appears to be perfectly oriented, articulate, and is currently looking at me with a great deal of patience," Marianne said. "She does not require calming down. She requires an explanation as to why an unauthorized party is attempting to access her academic records." "I am not an unauthorized party," my mother shrieked. The volume was so loud I could hear it clearly from where I stood. "I am her mother. I pay her tuition. I have rights." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. Trap set. Marianne's eyes narrowed slightly. She moved her hand to the computer mouse, clicking open a window on her dual monitor setup. I knew what she was looking at. I knew exactly what file she had just opened. "Actually, Mrs. Wells," Marianne said, her tone dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. "You do not— I beg your pardon?" "You do not pay her tuition," Marianne corrected, reading from the screen. "Miss Hayes has paid her own tuition in full for the last 3 years. She has no outstanding balance, she has no co-signers on any loans, and she has no FARPA waivers on file granting you access to her information." "That is a clerical error," my mother stammered. "We support her. We send her money. This is ridiculous. I am going to call your legal department. Do you know who we are? We are a prominent family in Tacoma. We have resources." I watched Marianne's face. I saw the moment she decided to drop the hammer. It wasn't out of anger. It was simply the most efficient way to end the conversation. "We are very aware of the financial landscape, Mrs. Wells," Marianne said. "Which brings me to the second point regarding your claim of authority." "What point?" my mother snapped. Marianne looked me in the eyes. There was a flicker of respect there, a silent acknowledgement of the secret I had kept for 3 years. "You mentioned suing the school," Marianne said, her voice silky and lethal. I would advise against that, because if you check the donor rolls for Redwood Valley University, you will find that the name Wells does not appear anywhere of significance. What does that have to do with? However, Marianne interrupted, raising her voice just enough to override the interruption, the name Isabella Hayes does. Silence. What are you talking about? My mother asked. Her voice had lost some of its steam. It was the sound of confusion creeping in. Isabella Hayes, Marianne read, enunciating every syllable like she was reading a verdict, is the sole trustee of the Hayes Wells Charitable Trust, as of this fiscal year. She is the largest individual donor to this university. I leaned against the heavy oak desk. Crossing my arms, I wished, for just a second, that I could see my mother's face. That is not true, my mother whispered. She is a student. She works in the library. She is the primary benefactor of the Hayes Engineering Scholarship Fund, Marianne continued, listing the items relentlessly. She is the sole underwriter for the Advanced Robotics Research Grant. And perhaps most relevant to your current confusion, she provided the capital endowment for the new Innovation Hall. On the other end of the line, there was a sound. It was a wet, choking noise. It sounded like someone had just been hit in the throat with a brick. It was the sound of my mother's reality shattering. She thought I was poor. She thought I was struggling. She thought the reason I lived in a small apartment and drove a beat-up sedan was because I had no choice. She thought she could starve me into submission by withholding support. She had no idea that grandmother had left everything to me. Not to my father, who would have let her spend it. Not to Evan, who would have gambled it. To me. And she had no idea that I had taken that money and invested it in the one thing she hated most, my own education and the institution that was giving it to me. Innovation Hall? My mother choked out. The glass building? The same, Marianne confirmed. So, Mrs. Wells, when you threaten to sue this university, or when you attempt to fraudulently withdraw Miss Hayes, you are not just harassing a student. You are attacking the university's most significant financial partner. The silence on the line was absolute. It was heavy and thick. I could almost hear the gears in my mother's head grinding to a halt, trying to process the magnitude of the miscalculation. She had tried to bully a student. She had run headfirst into a boardroom. Isabella? My mother's voice came back. It was different now. It was smaller, trembling. Isabella, are you there? I did not speak. I just nodded at Marianne. Marianne understood. Miss Hayes is here, Marianne said. But she is not taking personal calls. She is currently filing a formal report regarding identity theft and wire fraud. Fraud? My mother squeaked. No, wait, it was a misunderstanding. You submitted a forged medical document with a digital signature to a federal institution, Marianne said. You impersonated an adult student to access protected records. That is a felony, Mrs. Wells, and given the status of the victim, I am obligated to treat this as a threat to a major donor. Please, my mother said. The arrogance was gone, evaporated like mist. Do not do that. Let me talk to her. Evan we just needed please. I am transferring you to the Office of General Counsel, Marianne said. Do not hang up. If you hang up, they will simply forward the file to the district attorney in Oregon and Washington. Have a pleasant afternoon. Marianne pressed a button on her phone console. Click. The line went dead. The screaming stopped. The room was suddenly, blissfully quiet again. Marianne exhaled a short breath through her nose. She placed the receiver back in its cradle with a gentle click. She smoothed the front of her blazer, then looked up at me. The dynamic in the room had shifted completely. I was no longer a student in trouble. She was no longer just an administrator. We were two generals standing on the same side of the battlefield. I apologize for the disturbance. Miss Hayes, Marianne said, we pride ourselves on the security of our donor data. The fact that she was able to access the portal using your old credentials is an oversight we will correct immediately. She guessed the password, I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. It was my dog's name, It happens more often than you would think, Marianne said. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a fresh file folder. I have already alerted IT. They are scrubbing the login attempt. The withdrawal request has been hard deleted. It will not appear on any transcript, internal or external. Thank you, I said. However, Marianne said, leaning forward, her expression serious. You heard what I told her. I cannot just let this go. She admitted to the act on a recorded line. The university has a zero-tolerance policy for document forgery. If we do not report it, and it comes out later that we knew, we are liable. I know, I said. Do you want us to pursue it? She asked. Truly pursue it? Because once I send this over to legal, it leaves my hands. They will contact the police. They will contact the medical board regarding this doctor. Evans. I looked at the portrait of the university founder hanging on the wall behind her. I thought about the 4 phone calls during my lecture. I thought about the smug way she had told me to be a good girl and pack. I thought about Evan, sitting in his office, waiting for me to come home and clean up his mess so he could take the credit. They had tried to erase me. They had tried to turn me into a non-person, a mental case to be managed and hidden away. Marianne was waiting for my answer. She was giving me an out. I could tell her to drop it. I could say it was just a family squabble and walk away. But if I did that, they would try again. Maybe not today. Maybe not next week. But they would try. They would find another way to drag me back. I looked Marianne in the eye. Pursue it, I said. Send it to legal. Send it to the police. I want everything documented. Marianne nodded. It was a sharp, decisive movement. Very well. I will have the general counsel draft the affidavit. You will need to sign it. I will sign whatever you need, I said. One more thing, Marianne said. Her professional mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second, revealing a glimmer of genuine curiosity. Innovation Hall. Why did you name it Anonymous? I smiled. It was a cold smile, one that felt like it belonged to the new version of myself that had just been born in this office. Because, I said, I wanted to see if I could build something on my own before I put my name on it. And because I knew that if my family saw my name on a building, they would try to sell the bricks. Marianne allowed herself a small, dry chuckle. A wise assessment, it seems. She picked up her phone again to dial the internal extension for the lawyers. Sit down. Miss Hayes, she said, gesturing to the leather wingback chair in the corner. Would you like a water? This is going to be a long afternoon. I am fine, I said. But could you do me one favor? Name it. When the lawyers call her, I said, tell them to mention that the Innovation Hall donation was finalized 3 years ago. I want her to know exactly how long she's been underestimating me. Marianne's eyes glittered. Consider it done. She dialed the number. I walked over to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked campus. I could see the angular glass roof of Innovation Hall rising above the tree line in the distance. It looked strong. It looked permanent. My mother had tried to pull the ground out from under me. She did not realize I had already bought the land. The silence in the room was heavy. But it wasn't oppressive anymore. It was the silence of a weapon being loaded. I took a deep breath. The crying was over. The begging was over. Now, the paperwork began. Marianne placed the receiver down with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the violence of the conversation that had just ended. She looked at me. Her composure slightly frayed around the edges. It was rare, I imagined, for the executive assistant to the dean to witness a student's mother being threatened with federal charges before lunch. Miss Hayes, she said, her voice softer now. I am truly sorry. In my 20 years at this desk, I have seen overbearing parents, but I have never seen that. The audacity to fabricate a medical crisis is beyond anything we prepare for. Mrs. Cass, Gable, the registrar who had followed me down the hall, stood in the doorway. She looked pale. I echoed that sentiment, she said. We should have flagged the login attempt sooner. The IP mismatch usually triggers an automatic hold. But because the password was correct, the system hesitated. We are reviewing the protocols. They were waiting for me to break. They were waiting for the tears, the shaking, the inevitable collapse of a young woman who had just realized her family was actively plotting against her, but the collapse did not come. I felt a strange, icy calm settling over me. It was not numbness. It was the total absence of confusion. For years, I had wondered if I was the problem. I had wondered if I was too cold, too ungrateful, too distant. But now I had the data, and the data said I was under attack. "It is not your fault," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. "You followed the standard operating procedure for a verified login. My mother exploited a security vulnerability that was my responsibility to close. I do not need apologies." I adjusted my backpack strap, pulling it tighter against my shoulder. "I need next steps," I said. Marianne straightened up, the pity vanishing from her eyes, replaced by professional respect. "The General Counsel's office is located in the Administration Annex, Building C. However, given the circumstances, I can have Mr. Sterling come here." "No," I said. "I will go to him. I want to be moving. I need the direct line for the legal intake desk, and I need a physical copy of the withdrawal request log before I leave this suite." "I will print it now," Mrs. Gable said, turning on her heel to head back to her office. "And Marianne," I added, "I want a level 5 security flag on my profile, effective immediately." Marianne nodded. "Restricted access, no directory listing, no confirmation of enrollment to outside parties, password required for all phone contact." "More than that," I said. "I want a note in the special instructions field. If anyone identifying themselves as Diane Wells, Robert Wells, or Evan Wells contacts this university regarding me, the call is not to be transferred. It is to be routed immediately to campus safety and the legal office. They are not family. They are hostile actors." Marianne typed the note as I spoke. The keystrokes sounded like gunfire in the quiet office. "Done," she said. I took the printout Mrs. Gable handed me, a single sheet of paper that reduced my mother's betrayal to a timestamp and a status code, and I walked out. I did not go to the cafeteria. I did not go back to class. I walked out of the dean's office and stood in the corridor. Under the high vaulted ceiling, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number Marianne had written down for me. It rang twice. "Office of General Counsel, Redwood Valley University," a voice answered. "This is Isabella Hayes," I said. "Student ID 9004521. I'm currently standing in the administration building. I need to report a case of identity fraud, unauthorized access to a federal education record, and the submission of forged legal documents by a third party." The voice on the other end paused. "Is this a student conduct issue?" "No," I said. "This is a criminal issue. The perpetrators are non-students attempting to force a withdrawal. Dean Miller's office has already been briefed. I was told to contact Mr. Sterling. Hold, please." 30 seconds later, a deeper voice came on the line. "Miss Hayes, this is Marcus Sterling. Marianne just sent me a priority email. Are you safe?" "I am physically safe," I said. "I am legally exposed. I want to know what you need from me to ensure this does not happen again." "I need evidence," Sterling said. He sounded brisk, efficient. "The university will handle the unauthorized access charge because that is an attack on our network, but for the identity fraud regarding the medical documents, we need a paper trail." "Do you have the communications?" "I have the call logs," I said. "I have the voicemails. I have the text messages." "Do not delete anything," Sterling ordered. "I need you to screenshot every text, export every email, and save every voicemail file. I need a timeline. Start from the first contact this morning. Write it down while it is fresh. The exact time she called, what she said, the exact time the withdrawal request hit the system." "I can do that," I said. "We are going to file an informational report with the campus police today," Sterling continued. "It creates an official record. It is not an arrest warrant, but it establishes a pattern of behavior. If they show up on campus. They threatened to come on Saturday, I interrupted. She said she was bringing a truck. Okay, Sterling said. The rustle of paper came through the line. That elevates this. I will have campus safety issue a be on the lookout alert for their vehicle if you can provide a description. If they step foot on university property, they will be trespassed. They will be escorted off by uniformed officers. Good, I said. Send me the evidence package by 5 o'clock, Sterling said. And Miss Hayes? Check your email. If she submitted a document, she likely sent a copy to you to make it look legitimate. I need to see that document. I will find it, I said. I hung up. I needed air. The administration building felt too small, too contained. I pushed through the doors and walked back out into the weather. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a damp, piercing chill that seeped through my coat. I walked without really seeing where I was going, my feet finding the path by muscle memory. I ended up, inevitably, in front of Innovation Hall. I sat on a wet concrete bench facing the glass facade. The building was glowing in the late afternoon gloom, the lights from the robotics labs casting long, geometric shadows across the plaza. I sat there and looked at it. For 3 years, I had come here to feel proud. I would sit on this bench and tell myself that I was building a future that belonged to me. I would look at the students walking in and out, students who had scholarships because of the fund I set up, and feel a warm, quiet satisfaction. I thought that was what family felt like, supporting people, helping them grow. But sitting there now, with the cold dampness soaking into my jeans, I realized I had been naive. I thought I was hiding my wealth to protect myself from being treated differently by my peers. But the truth was, I was hiding it because deep down, I knew that if my real family saw this building, they would not see a legacy. They would not see generosity. They would see a theft. In their minds, this money belonged to them. Every dollar I spent on a scholarship was a dollar I stole from Evan's next failed startup. Every grant I funded was a betrayal of my duty to prop up my parents' lifestyle. They did not love me. They loved my utility, and when I stopped being useful, they tried to break me so I would fit back into the box they had built. My phone chimed. I looked down. It was a notification from my email app. Diane Wells sent you an attachment. The subject line was, Doctor, Evan's letter. For your records. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to delete it unread. Part of me wanted to throw the phone into the decorative fountain in the center of the plaza. But Mr. Sterling had asked for evidence. I opened the email. The body of the message was short. Isabella, I know you are upset, but this is for your own good. Doctor, Evans agrees that you need a period of rest. We are just doing what is best for you. See the attached medical necessity form. I clicked the attachment. It was a PDF. It looked official at first glance. It had a letterhead, Evans Family Practice and Wellness Center. It had a logo. It had a signature at the bottom that looked like a jagged scrawl. I zoomed in on the text. To whom it may concern, I have been treating Isabella Hayes for severe anxiety and dissociative episodes. It is my professional medical opinion that she is currently incapacitated and unable to make decisions regarding her academic or financial well-being. I recommend an immediate medical withdrawal and transfer to home care under the supervision of her parents. I stared at the words, incapacitated, unable to make decisions. They were not just trying to pull me out of school, they were building a case for a conservatorship. If this document was accepted, if it became part of my official record, they could use it to challenge my control over the trust. They could use it to freeze my bank accounts. They could argue in court that I was mentally unfit to manage my own fortune and that my loving parents should step in as guardians. This was not a rescue mission. This was a hostile takeover. I looked at the header of the letter again. There was an email address listed for the doctor. Contact evans-medical-group-secure.net. It looked legitimate, but something about it felt off. Doctor, Evans was a small-town doctor. He still used paper charts the last time I saw him. Since when did he have a secure custom domain? I minimized the email and opened a browser window. I typed the domain name into a WHOS lookup tool. A trick I had learned in my intro to computer science class. The results popped up in seconds. Domain name, Evans-Medical-Group-Secure.net. Creation date, yesterday. Registrar, cheap domains, LLC, registrant country, USA, created yesterday. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, but it was a dark, jagged thing. Doctor. Evans had been practicing for 30 years. He did not buy a domain name yesterday. I opened a new tab and searched for the clinic's phone number listed on the letterhead. We could not find any results for this number. I dialed the number. I put the phone to my ear, listening to the silence of the plaza. Ring, ring. You have reached the voicemail of... The voice was robotic. The standard automated greeting of a burner phone app. Subscriber 55921. It was a fake, all of it. They had not even gone to Dr. Evans. They had probably realized that asking a real doctor to commit fraud was too risky. Or maybe Dr. Evans had actually refused. So they did what Evan always did. They cut corners. They built a fake letterhead. They bought a cheap domain to make the email look professional if anyone checked. They set up a Google Voice number. They created a fictional version of a doctor to diagnose a fictional version of me. My mother had sat at her kitchen table, probably with Evan helping her with the tech stuff, and they had typed out a sentence declaring me incapacitated. They typed it out while drinking coffee. They typed it out while planning what they would do with the trust money once I was locked away in my childhood bedroom, medicated and compliant. I looked up at Innovation Hall again. The glass seemed sharper now, harder. I had been planning to just defend myself. I had been planning to stop the withdrawal and maybe get a restraining order. I had thought that was enough. But looking at that fake letter, looking at the clumsy, desperate, malicious attempt to declare me insane so they could rob me, I realized that defense was not enough. If I just blocked them, they would try again. They would refine the forgery. They would find a real doctor to bribe. They would not stop until they had the money. I could not just hold the line. I had to advance. I closed the email. I took a screenshot of the WHOIS lookup. I took a screenshot of the call log showing the burner number. I compiled it all into a single folder. Then I called the legal office back. Mr. Sterling, I said when he answered. Miss Hayes, did you find the document? I found it, I said. And I found something else. The doctor does not exist. The letterhead is fake. The domain was registered yesterday. They are not just fabricating a withdrawal request. They are fabricating a medical diagnosis to establish legal incapacitation. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. Are you sure? Sterling asked, his voice dropping. I have the domain registry logs, I said. I am sending them to you now. This is a conspiracy to commit wire fraud and medical identity theft with the intent of financial exploitation. Okay, Sterling said. Okay, that changes the posture. We are no longer looking at a nuisance issue. This is a felony scheme. Mr. Sterling, I said, I want to be very clear about my instructions. Go ahead. I do not want a warning letter, I said. I do not want a polite request for them to cease and desist. I want to pursue this fully. I want the police involved. I want the district attorney involved. I want to press charges for every single statute they violated. Isabella, Sterling said, using my first name for the first time. If we do this, it becomes public record. It will be messy. It is your family. I looked at the rain falling on the pavement. I looked at the building that proved I was capable, brilliant, and powerful. Everything they said I wasn't. They are not family, I said. They are a liability. I took a breath, letting the cold air fill my lungs. No silent settlement, I said. Burn them? Understood, Sterling said. I will draft the affidavit. Come to my office. I hung up the phone. I stood up from the bench. I wiped the rain from my face. I was done crying. I was done wishing. I turned my back on Innovation Hall and started walking toward the legal office. My steps were fast. My head was up. I was going to war. I sat in a quiet corner of the university library, the kind of place where the silence is so heavy it feels like a physical weight. The adrenaline from the dean's office was beginning to fade, replaced by a cold, gnawing anxiety that settled in the pit of my stomach. I had secured my academic standing. I had blocked the withdrawal. But something Marianne had said, something about financial exploitation, kept echoing in my mind. If they were willing to forge a medical document to physically control my location, what else were they willing to forge? I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim light. I navigated to the annual credit report website. This was something I had always avoided. Not because I was irresponsible. My trust fund was managed by professionals, and my tuition was paid in full every semester. But because looking at financial data always felt like opening a door I might not be able to close. It felt like inviting trouble, but trouble was already here. I typed in my social security number, I verified my identity, I clicked Get Report. The loading wheel spun for what felt like 10 years. When the page finally refreshed, I did not gasp, I did not scream, I just stopped breathing. I knew what I should see. I should see a sparse history. A student credit card I used for groceries and paid off every month. A lease agreement for my apartment. Maybe the background check from the utility company. That was it. That was not what I saw. The screen was full of red ink. There was a line of credit opened 11 months ago. Balance, $42,000. There was a business credit card issued by a major bank. Limit, $20,000. Status, over limit. There was a bizarre account labeled Vendor Financing, Net 30. Balance, $15,000. And under every single one of these accounts, listed as the authorized business entity, was a name that made my vision blur with rage. Evan Wells Ventures. I stared at the screen. My brother's company, the startup my mother had been bragging about for the last year, the logistics firm that was going to change the world. He hadn't raised capital from investors. He hadn't taken out a legitimate small business loan. He had funded his entire operation using my social security number. I scrolled down to the inquiry section. The dates lined up perfectly with text messages I had received from my mother over the last year. November 12th. Honey, our accountant needs to verify your social for the family tax filing. Send it over? January 4th. Isabella, did you change your permanent address? We need to make sure the insurance paperwork is right. March 20th. Can you send a picture of your driver's license? Dad is updating the beneficiaries on his life insurance and needs the exact spelling and ID number. I had sent it all. I had sent it because I was a good daughter. I had sent it because I trusted them. I had sent it because I never, in a million years, thought that family tax filing meant we are going to commit identity theft against our own child. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a vibrating, high-frequency fury. I dialed the customer service number for the bank holding the $42,000 line of credit. Fraud department, I told the automated voice system. I waited on hold for 12 minutes. I used those 12 minutes to take screenshots of every single pixel on my laptop screen. This is David in Fraud Operations. How can I help you? My name is Isabella Hayes, I said. My voice was robotic. I am looking at my credit report. There is a $42,000 line of credit under the name Evan Wells Ventures, attached to my social security number. I did not open this account. I do not own this business. I want to know how it was opened. David paused. I could hear him typing. Okay, Ms. Hayes. Let me pull up the file. Can you verify your date of birth? I gave him the information. All right, David said. I see the account here. It was opened online on November 14th of last year. How was it signed? I asked. It was signed via DocuSign, David said. Electronic signature, the IP address for the signing device. He trailed off. That is interesting. What is interesting? The IP address traces to a residential connection in Tacoma, Washington, David said. And the device ID is registered as an iPad Pro, my mother's iPad, the one I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. And the recovery email? I asked. Where are the statements going? They are going to let me see evan.biz.admin@gmail.com. I closed my eyes. That is not my email, I said. That is my brother, David. I need you to freeze this account immediately. This is identity theft. I am filing a police report today. I can freeze it for investigation, David said, his voice shifting from customer service polite to serious. We will need a copy of the police report number to permanently discharge the debt from your name. But Ms. Hayes, there is something else. What? There was a request made 3 days ago to increase the credit limit to $60,000, David said. It was denied because of a missed payment. I hung up. I sat there in the library, and suddenly, the entire puzzle clicked into place. The picture was so clear it was blinding. The withdrawal from school, the fake medical crisis, the urgency. It wasn't just about controlling me. It wasn't just that they missed me. They were drowning. Evan had burned through the $42,000. He had maxed out the credit card. He was missing payments. The house of cards was collapsing. The banks were calling. The vendor financing people were probably threatening legal action. If I stayed at school, if I stayed independent, eventually the collections agencies would find me. They would call my phone. They would send letters to my apartment in Oregon. I would find out. I would report it. And Evan would go to jail. But if they dragged me home, if they forced me to withdraw under the guise of a mental breakdown, I remembered my mother's words on the phone. Evan needs you. He needs someone to help with the books. It wasn't a request for help. It was a setup. They wanted me home so they could sit me down, gaslight me, and force me to sign papers that legitimized the fraud. They would tell me I had forgotten that I agreed to help him. They would tell me I signed those papers months ago during a manic episode. They would use the fake medical diagnosis to claim I was confused, while simultaneously using my physical presence to force me to take responsibility for the debt. They were going to turn me into the fall guy for Evan's failed business. They were going to ruin my credit, drain my trust fund to pay off his mistakes, and keep me medicated and compliant in my childhood bedroom so I could never testify against them. I felt a wave of nausea, followed instantly by a cold, hard resolve. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a crime scene. I spent the next hour working with the efficiency of a forensic accountant. I did not just screenshot the accounts. I downloaded the transaction histories. I saw charges for business dinners at steakhouses I knew Evan frequented. I saw charges for a lease on a luxury SUV. I saw cash withdrawals at casinos. This wasn't a startup. It was a slush fund. I saved everything to a secure cloud drive. Then I saved it to a second cloud drive with a different password. Then I emailed the files to my encrypted university account. I walked over to the library printers. I printed every single page. The stack of paper was an inch thick. I put it in a heavy-duty folder. I needed a lawyer. And not Mr. Sterling. Sterling represented the university. His job was to protect the school from liability. I needed someone whose only job was to destroy the people doing this to me. I searched for civil litigation attorney Briar Glenn Fraud. I found a name, Sarah Vance. Her website was stark, serious, and mentioned complex family financial litigation. I called her office. I need an emergency consultation, I told the receptionist. I am a high net worth individual who has just discovered 6 figures of identity fraud committed by immediate family members who are currently attempting to establish a false conservatorship over me. The receptionist paused. Can you come in at 4:30? I will be there, I said. I packed up my laptop. My bag felt heavier now. It carried the weight of my family's betrayal. I walked out of the library and into the crisp evening air. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the quad. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number, local area code for Tacoma, but not my house line, and not my parents' cell phones. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity, or maybe instinct, made me answer. Hello? I said. Isabella? The voice was low, tired, and familiar. It was my father, Robert Wells. He never called me, In 4 years. He had called me maybe twice, usually to hand the phone to my mother. He was the quiet one, the one who sat in the armchair and read the newspaper while my mother screamed, the one I used to think was just passive, just a victim of her personality like I was. "Dad?" I said. "Why are you calling from this number?" "It is a prepaid phone," he said. His voice sounded hollow. "Your mother does not know I am calling." For a split second, a tiny, foolish spark of hope lit up in my chest. He is warning me. He is going to tell me to run. He is on my side. "Dad," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "Mom tried to withdraw me from school. She forged a doctor's note, and I just found the credit reports. Evan used my name. He stole—" "Stop," he said. The word was not shouted. It was just a command, heavy and final. "Dad?" "You are embarrassing your mother," he said. The spark of hope died. It didn't just die. It was stomped out, crushed into the dirt. "I am embarrassing her?" I asked, my voice rising. "Dad, Evan stole $50,000 in my name. That is a felony. Mom tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. That is a felony. I am not embarrassing her. I am reporting a crime." "It is just money, Isabella," he said. He sounded exhausted, as if my resistance was a chore he had to complete before dinner. "Evan is in a tight spot. He just needed a bridge loan. We intended to pay it back before you ever noticed. But you always have to make everything difficult. You always have to be so dramatic." "Dramatic?" I whispered. "I am the victim here." "You are family," he said. "Family helps family. Your mother is a wreck right now. The school called the legal department. You set the lawyers on us? On your own parents?" "You stole my identity," I said. "We gave you that identity," he snapped. "We raised you. We fed you. And now, because of a few signatures, you are going to destroy your brother's future?" He is on the verge of a breakthrough. If this gets out, investors will walk away. "There are no investors. Dad!" I shouted, attracting the stares of a few passing students. "I saw the credit report. It is casino withdrawals and car payments. There is no business." "That is enough," he said. His voice dropped to a tone I remembered from my childhood, the tone that meant the discussion was over. "You are going to call the school. You are going to tell them it was a misunderstanding. You are going to withdraw the complaint, and then you are going to come home and sign the papers to consolidate the debt so Evan can restructure. If you do not—" "If I do not—" "What?" I challenged. "If you do not," he said, "then you are no daughter of mine." I stood there on the sidewalk. The wind bit through my coat. I realized then that I had been wrong about him. He wasn't the passive victim. He wasn't the enabler. He was the architect. He knew. He had known the whole time. He knew about the credit cards. He knew about the forgery. He probably drove Evan to the bank. He was okay with sacrificing me. He was okay with burning my life to the ground to keep his golden sun warm. He didn't love me. He didn't even like me. To him, I was just an asset to be liquidated when the preferred child needed cash. "Dad?" I said. My voice was very quiet now. "Yes," he said, sounding relieved, thinking he had won. "You are right," I said. "I am not your daughter. Not anymore. Isabella, do not be—" "And Dad?" I cut him off. "Tell Evan I hope he enjoyed the casino, because the forensic audit is going to be very thorough." I hung up the phone. I stared at the device in my hand. It felt contaminated. I blocked the number. Then I blocked his real cell number. I blocked the house number. I blocked Evan's number. I stood alone on the street corner. I felt lighter. The heaviness of guilt, of obligation, of wondering if I was doing the right thing. It was all gone. They had freed me. By showing me exactly who they were, they had given me permission to destroy them. I checked my watch. 4:15. I had an appointment with a lawyer, and I had a folder full of evidence that was going to put my family in prison. I started walking. I did not look back. I did not go home. I did not go to the dorms where they might be waiting in the parking lot with a spare key and a rehearsed speech about family unity. I chose the battlefield myself. I selected a coffee shop called The Daily Grind. It was located 3 blocks from the Briar Glen County Courthouse and 2 blocks from the police station. It was a place where lawyers met clients and paralegals chugged caffeine before hearings. It was public, it was well lit, and it had security cameras pointing at every table. I arrived 20 minutes early. I sat at a table in the center of the room, far from the exits, ensuring that if they wanted to cause a scene, they would have to do it in front of an audience of legal professionals. I did not order a drink. I was not there to consume anything with them. I placed the heavy folder containing the credit reports and the forensic audit on the table. It sat there like a loaded gun. At 4:55, I saw them through the plate glass window. My mother, Diane, led the procession. She was wearing a beige trench coat and a scarf tied with practiced elegance. Her face was set in a mask of tragic concern, the kind of expression a politician wears when visiting a disaster zone. She was ready to play the victim. She was ready to cry. My father, Robert, followed a few paces behind. He looked smaller than I remembered. He walked with his head slightly down, his hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket. He looked like a man who was just carrying the baggage, both literal and metaphorical. They entered the shop, scanning the room. When my mother saw me, her face crumpled into a theatrical display of relief. She hurried over, ignoring the other patrons. "Isabella," she breathed, reaching out as if to hug me. I did not stand up. I did not smile. I just watched her hands. "Sit down," I said. The tone of my voice stopped her. It was not the voice of her daughter. It was the voice of a stranger. She hesitated, her hands hovering in the air, before she pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. My father sat next to her, avoiding my eyes. "Where is Evan?" I asked. "He is parking the car," my mother said, her voice trembling. "He is so worried about you. Bella, we all are. When the school called when they said you were making these accusations, we knew you were not yourself." "I am exactly myself," I said. "You look exhausted," she said, leaning in, trying to establish intimacy. "Look at your eyes. You have not been sleeping. This pressure, it is too much for you. That is why we are here, to take the burden off." The bell above the door chimed. Evan walked in. He was wearing a suit jacket over a t-shirt and expensive designer sneakers. He walked with a bounce in his step, projecting the confidence of a tech CEO who had just closed a Series A round. He held a leather laptop bag in one hand and his phone in the other. He did not look like a man who was worried about his sister. He looked like a man arriving at a board meeting he intended to dominate. He saw us and smirked. He pulled up a chair at the head of the table, scraping the legs against the floor loudly. "Hey, kid," he said. He placed his phone on the table face down. Then he unzipped his bag and pulled out a MacBook Pro. He opened it, the screen waking up instantly. "Sorry I'm late. Had to take a call from a supplier." I watched him. I watched the way he opened the laptop, as if this were a negotiation and I was a junior employee he was about to fire. "Put the computer away." "Evan," I said. "Just checking some numbers," he said, not looking up. "So, Mom says you are having a meltdown. Let us handle this quickly. I have a dinner reservation at 7. My mother reached for my hand across the table. I pulled it back. "Isabella," she said, her voice dripping with syrup. "We love you. We know you are confused. We are going to withdraw you from school. Just for a semester. Just until you get your head straight. You can come home, rest, and help Evan with some light administrative work to keep your mind occupied. It will be good for you." "I am not withdrawing," I said. "You do not have a choice," Evan said, tapping a key. "Mom already filed the papers." "The papers were rejected," I said. "And the school has flagged the attempt as fraud." Evan stopped typing. He looked up, his brow furrowing slightly. "What?" "I know," I said. "Know what?" my mother asked, her eyes widening innocently. "That we are trying to help?" "I know about the credit lines," I said. The air at the table changed instantly. It was as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Evan froze. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. My mother blinked, her mouth opening slightly, but no sound came out. My father shifted in his seat, staring at the table surface. I pulled my credit report this afternoon, I said. My voice was low, steady, and clear. I know about the $42,000 line of credit. I know about the $20,000 business card. I know about the vendor financing account. I know about the missed payments. Silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Evan looked at my mother. My mother looked at Evan. It was a quick, sharp exchange of panic, a single glance that confirmed everything. She knows. How does she know? You said she never checks. I do not know what you are talking about, Evan said, attempting a laugh. It sounded brittle. That must be a mistake. The bureaus make errors all the time. It is not a mistake, I said. I called the bank. They confirmed the accounts were opened with my social security number. They confirmed the digital signatures were traced to Mom's iPad. They confirmed the statements are going to your email address. I reached for the folder. I opened it. I took out the stack of papers, dense with rows of numbers and transaction logs. I dropped it on the table. Thud. The sound was heavy. It sounded like a judge's gavel. Here is the history, I said, pointing to the top page. Steak dinners, bottle service at clubs, a lease on a Range Rover, online gambling sites. You are not running a logistics company. Evan. You are running a Ponzi scheme with one victim, me. My mother's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. She dropped the mask of the concerned parent. She leaned back, crossing her arms defensively. So? She said. The word hung in the air. So? I repeated, incredulous. You stole $60,000 from me. You committed identity theft. You destroyed my credit score. It is family money, she hissed, keeping her voice low but intense. We raised you. We put clothes on your back. We fed you for 18 years. Do you have any idea how much that costs? And now your brother tries to build something, tries to make something of himself, and you are going to nitpick about whose name is on the paperwork? It is not nitpicking, I said. It is a felony. It is a loan, Evan snapped, slamming his laptop shut. I was going to pay it back. I just needed liquidity to get the initial contract signed. You are not using the credit. You are just a student. You do not need a 750 credit score. I needed it. You did not ask, I said. You stole. We did not steal, my mother said, tears starting to form in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of anger. How dare you use that word? We are your parents. Everything you have is because of us. If Evan succeeds, we all succeed. You are being incredibly selfish, Isabella. Selfish and ungrateful, just like you have always been. I am selfish? I asked. I pay my own rent. I pay my own tuition. I ask you for nothing. And you repay that by forging my signature and burying me in debt so Evan can play businessman? He is a businessman, my mother shouted. A few people at nearby tables turned to look. She lowered her voice, trembling with rage. He has vision, something you would not understand with your little engineering books. He thinks big, and we needed to support that. If you were a good sister, you would have offered. But I did not offer, I said. So you took. I looked at my father. He had not said a word. He was staring at the sugar packets in the center of the table, arranging them into a straight line. Dad, I said, you knew, didn't you? He looked up. His eyes were tired, but there was no apology in them. There was only annoyance. Isabella, he said, why are you making this so difficult? Difficult? I asked. You are making a scene, he said, gesturing vaguely around the coffee shop. You are dragging strangers into private family matters. You are threatening legal action. For what? To prove a point? So Evan used your name. So what? We would have fixed it eventually. But now? Now you have involved the school. You have involved the bank. You are embarrassing your mother. You are embarrassing the family name." I stared at him. In that moment, the last thread of attachment I had to these people snapped. It was a clean break. He did not care that I had been robbed. He did not care that my financial future had been jeopardized. He did not care that they had committed a crime against me. He only cared that I had caught them. He only cared that the neighbors might find out. He only cared that the facade of the respectable Wells family was cracking. They did not fear causing me pain. They feared being exposed. "You are right," I said. "I am making it difficult." I stood up. My mother looked up at me, panic flaring in her eyes again. "Where are you going?" "Sit down. We are not finished." "We are finished," I said. "I am not coming home. I am not withdrawing. And I am certainly not signing any consolidation loans." "You have to," Evan said. Standing up to match my height, he puffed out his chest, trying to be intimidating. "The bank froze the accounts because of your call. I have vendors to pay tomorrow. If you do not call them back and authorize the charges, the business goes under." "Then let it go under," I said. "You little witch," my mother spat. "If you walk away now, do not expect us to be there when you fail. Do not expect a penny from us." I almost laughed. "I do not want your pennies. I have my own money, and unlike Evan, I earned it." I turned to leave. "Isabella," my father barked, "if you leave this table, you are choosing to be an enemy of this family." "I did not choose that," I said, looking back at them one last time. "You chose it when you signed my name." I took a step away, then stopped. I turned back to look at Evan, who was turning a shade of purple I had never seen before. "From this point forward," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the quiet shop, "any communication with me goes through my attorney, Sarah Vance. If you call me, if you text me, or if you show up at my apartment, it will be considered a violation of the harassment order I'm filing tomorrow." Evan sneered. It was the look of a bully who had never been punched back. "You would not dare," he said. "You are bluffing. You do not have the guts to sue your own brother. You are too weak." I looked him dead in the eye. I thought about the 3 years I had spent building my life in silence. I thought about the building on campus with no name on it, the building that I owned. I thought about the millions of dollars in the trust fund that they didn't know existed. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They were about to learn that I was quiet because I was calculating. "You would not dare," Evan repeated, stepping closer. "You need us." I smiled. It was the coldest smile I had ever worn. "You bet on the wrong person." "Evan," I said. And then I walked out. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the street. I did not look back to see their reactions. I did not need to. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were panicking. They were scrambling. And they were right to be afraid. Because I wasn't just going to sue them. I was going to dismantle them. The morning after the confrontation at the coffee shop, the sky over Briar Glen was a bruised purple, heavy with the threat of another storm. I was in the fluids laboratory, calibrating a flow sensor for my senior project, when my phone buzzed. It was not a block number. It was an internal university extension. "Isabella Hayes," I answered, wiping grease from my hands with a rag. "Miss Hayes, this is Arthur Henderson," the voice said. "Director of University Advancement." I straightened up. The advancement office handled donations, endowments, and alumni relations. They were the people who managed the money I had secretly funneled into the school for the past 3 years. I had spoken to Mr. Henderson exactly twice, once to sign the initial trust agreement, and once to approve the architectural plans for Innovation Hall. He was a discreet man who understood that anonymous meant anonymous. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson," I said. "Is everything all right with the scholarship fund?" "The fund is performing well," he said, his tone hesitant. "However, I received a rather unusual inquiry this morning that I felt obligated to bring to your attention immediately. A woman contacted my office about an hour ago. She identified herself as Diane Wells. She claimed to be the—" He paused, searching for the right word. The senior administrator of the family estate. I gripped the edge of the lab bench. Go on. She was inquiring about the naming rights for Innovation Hall. Henderson continued. She stated that there had been a clerical error in the original donor agreement. She claimed that the donation was intended to be credited to the Wells Family Trust, specifically highlighting Mr. Evan Wells as a co-donor. I let out a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. It was breathtaking. It really was. Yesterday, they had tried to claim I was mentally incompetent to drag me home. Today, having learned from Marianne that I was actually the university's biggest donor, they had pivoted instantly. If they could not force me to withdraw, they would try to hijack my legacy. They did not just want my money, they wanted my name. Or rather, they wanted to erase my name and replace it with theirs. What exactly did she ask for? Mr. Henderson? I asked, my voice calm. She requested that the donor plaque in the lobby be updated, he said. She wanted the attribution changed from anonymous to the Evan and Isabella Wells Foundation. She also asked if we could issue a press release announcing Mr. Evan Wells's generous contribution to the engineering department. She mentioned something about him needing the publicity for an upcoming business venture. Of course, Evan was drowning in debt. He had no product, no customers, and a credit history that I was about to incinerate. He needed a lifeline. If he could show potential investors, or perhaps just the people he owed money to, that he was a major donor to a prestigious university, it would buy him credibility. It would make him look like a successful tycoon instead of a fraudster who stole his little sister's identity to gamble online. They were trying to use my hard work to whitewash his crimes. Mr. Henderson, I said, did you authorize any changes? Absolutely not, he said, sounding offended. The trust agreement is exclusively between the university and you. Miss Hayes, your mother is not a signatory. I told her that donor privacy laws prevented me from discussing the account details with third parties. She became quite insistent. She mentioned that as your mother, she had implied executive power over your assets. She has no power, I said. Implied or otherwise. I assumed as much, Henderson said, but given the aggressive nature of her request, I wanted to alert you. She asked for copies of the endowment financial statements. I refused. Thank you, I said. Mr. Henderson, I need to make a formal adjustment to our contact protocols. Effective immediately. Name it. I am coming to your office in 20 minutes to sign a directive, I said. It will state that any inquiry regarding the Hayes Wells Trust, the Innovation Hall Endowment, or any scholarship fund attached to my name must be routed directly to my legal counsel. If Diane Wells, Robert Wells, or Evan Wells contacts your office again, you are to inform them that they are soliciting confidential financial information and that the conversation is being recorded for legal purposes. I will have the papers ready, Henderson said. I hung up. I did not feel the panic I had felt yesterday. That emotion had burned away, leaving behind something harder and sharper. I felt like a chess player watching an opponent make a desperate, sloppy move. They were overextending. They were flailing. I left the lab and walked across the quad to the advancement office. The wind was biting, but I barely felt it. I walked past Innovation Hall. Through the glass facade, I could see students working in the robotics lab. That building was mine. It was built with money my grandmother left me because she knew I was the only one who wouldn't squander it. Evan wanted his name on that wall? He would have to tear the building down brick by brick to get it. I signed the papers in Henderson's office with a flourish. The ink was still wet when I called Sarah Vance, the civil litigation attorney I had hired the day before. They tried to rebrand the building, I told her as I walked back out into the gray daylight. You are joking, Sarah said. She had a voice like gravel and coffee, rough and reassuring. My mother called the university to add Evan as a co-donor, I said. She wants a press release. They are trying to use my endowment to legitimize his fake company. That is misrepresentation, Sarah said, and it borders on attempted fraud if they plan to use that press release to solicit investors. Isabella, this is actually good for us. How is it good? It shows a pattern, Sarah explained. It proves that their interest in your affairs is purely financial. It dismantles their concerned parents' narrative. A mother worried about her daughter's mental health does not call the fundraising office to demand a plaque for her son. We can use this. What is the next step? I asked. I am sending a cease and desist letter today, Sarah said. It is going out via courier to your parents' house and to the registered address of Evan Wells Ventures. It will cite harassment, identity theft, and attempted misappropriation of assets. It will explicitly forbid them from claiming any association with your university endowments. If Evan puts donor to Redwood Valley University on his LinkedIn or his pitch deck, we sue him for defamation and false advertising. Do it, I said. And Sarah? Make it scary. Oh, it will be terrifying, she promised. I hung up and headed toward the campus safety office. I had another meeting. Detective Miller, no relation to the dean, was a heavy-set man with a mustache that looked like it belonged in a 1980s cop movie. He was sitting at a metal desk covered in files. When I walked in, he tapped a folder in front of him. We got the trace back from IT, he said without preamble. And? The unauthorized login to the student portal came from an IP address registered to a residential Comcast account in Tacoma, he said. The subscriber is Robert Wells. My father, I said. We also matched the device ID, Miller continued. It is an iPad. Interestingly, that same device attempted to access the university payroll system 2 hours later, likely looking for your employment records, but was blocked by the firewall. They had tried to find out how much money I made at my library job. They were digging for scraps. So we have proof, I said. We have proof of unauthorized access to a federal education record. Miller said, That is a computer crime. In Oregon, it is a Class C felony. Since it crossed state lines, it could technically be federal. But the feds usually do not pick up cases this small unless there are large financial damages. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick file of credit reports and the forensic audit I had compiled. Is $62,000 large enough? I asked. Miller's eyebrows shot up. What is this? Evidence of identity theft, credit card fraud, and wire fraud. I said. My brother, Evan Wells, used my social security number to open multiple lines of credit. My mother, Diane Wells, used her device to facilitate the digital signatures. They used the money for personal expenses disguised as business costs. And when the payments became unmanageable, they attempted to force my withdrawal from this university to establish a conservatorship to cover their tracks. I placed the stack on his desk. This is not just a student conduct issue, detective, I said. This is organized financial predation. Miller opened the file. He ran a finger down the first page of the spreadsheet. Looking at the casino withdrawals and the luxury car lease payments, he whistled low and soft. Okay, he said, his demeanor shifting from campus cop to criminal investigator. This puts it in a different bracket. The computer trespass was one thing. This is grand larceny. I want to press charges, I said. I want to file a formal criminal complaint with the Briar Glen Police Department, and I want you to forward this evidence to the Pierce County Sheriff's Department in Washington. You know, once we start this train, it does not stop, right? Miller asked, looking me in the eye. These are your parents. If the prosecutor picks this up, they could do real time, or at least face significant probation and restitution. There is no taking it back once the warrant is signed. I thought about my father's voice on the phone. You are not my daughter. I thought about Evans smirking in the coffee shop. You are too weak. I do not want to stop the train, I said. I want to accelerate it. All right, Miller said. He pulled a fresh complaint form from his drawer. Sit down. Let us get the narrative on record. By the time I left the police station, it was dark. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement. I felt exhausted, but also strangely light. I had fired the cannon. Now I just had to wait for the impact. The impact arrived 2 hours later, but not in the way I expected. It started with a text from my Aunt Linda. Isabella, your mother just called me in tears. She says you are having a breakdown and refusing to come home. She says you are threatening to sue Evan. Honey, what is wrong with you? They are your family. Then a message from my cousin Mike. Hey, heard you are going crazy out there. Evan says the school brainwashed you or something. Do not be a jerk. Bella, call your mom. Then an email from my godmother. Isabella, I am praying for you. Please do not let the devil harden your heart against your parents. They only want to help you. I sat on my bed in my apartment, watching the notifications roll in. My mother had launched her counteroffensive. She knew she couldn't win on the facts. She knew the legal ground was crumbling beneath her feet, so she had retreated to the one place where she still held power, the court of family opinion. She was painting a masterpiece of manipulation. In her version of the story, I was the unstable, ungrateful daughter who had snapped under the pressure of school. I was being manipulated by outsiders, my lawyers, the university. She and Evan were the saints trying to save me, and my threats of lawsuits were just symptoms of my illness. She was weaponizing the family's concern to isolate me. She wanted me to feel alone. She wanted me to feel like a pariah so I would cave and come running back to the fold for forgiveness. It was a classic abuser tactic. Isolate the victim, discredit their reality. A year ago, this would have crushed me. I would have called Aunt Linda and tried to explain. I would have sent paragraphs of text to Cousin Mike defending myself. I would have cried because they thought I was the bad guy. But I was not that girl anymore. I did not reply to Aunt Linda. I did not reply to Mike. I did not reply to my godmother. Instead, I took screenshots. Every text, every email, every voicemail where a relative urged me to drop this nonsense and listen to my father. I saved them all into a new folder labeled harassment, third-party proxies. I was not going to argue with them. I was not going to try to win them over. They were flying monkeys, dispatched by the witch to do her bidding. Engaging with them would only drain my energy and give my mother more ammunition. I forwarded the screenshots to Sarah Vance, added to the file. I typed, evidence of a coordinated campaign to disparage my character and coerce me into dropping the legal action. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Evan. Nice try with the lawyer letter. You think a piece of paper scares me? Mom is rallying the whole family. Everyone knows you are crazy. You are going to be alone. Isabella, totally alone. Just give up. I looked at the message. He was right about one thing. I was going to be alone. But he was wrong about what that meant. Alone meant I was safe. Alone meant my credit score was secure. Alone meant I could sleep at night without wondering who was stealing my identity. I typed a reply to Evan. It was the only response I sent that night. Forwarded to the district attorney. Please continue to text me. Every message adds another month to your sentence. I watched the 3 little dots appear as he started to type a response. Then the dots disappeared. He didn't write back. I put my phone on the nightstand. I turned off the light. Outside, the rain began to fall again, washing the campus clean. They wanted to change the name on the building. They wanted to rewrite history. But I had the pen now, and I was writing a police report. The email arrived at 2 a.m. on a Thursday. I was awake, of course. Sleep had become a concept rather than a reality over the last 48 hours. I was sitting at my desk, the glow of my monitors the only light in the apartment, cross-referencing my bank statements with the transaction logs I had pulled from the credit bureau. My inbox pinged. The sender was unfamiliar. R. Grant, temp Gmail, com. The subject line was blank. I hovered my mouse over the delete button, assuming it was spam or perhaps another flying monkey from my family sent to harass me. But something made me pause. I opened it. The message was only 2 sentences long. I worked as the contract bookkeeper for Evan Wells Ventures for 3 months. I have the files you're looking for. My heart hammered against my ribs. I typed a reply immediately, my fingers flying across the keys. Who are you? The response came back within 10 seconds. Meet me at the Briar Glen Public Library, main branch, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Come alone. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. The Briar Glen Public Library was a fortress of brick and glass. smelling of damp wool and old paper. At 10 o'clock on a weekday, it was mostly empty, save for a few retirees reading newspapers and students hiding in the study carrels. I saw her immediately. She was sitting at a table near the reference section, her back to the wall, watching the entrance. She looked young, maybe my age, with dark circles under her eyes that rivaled my own. She was wearing a thick hoodie and kept glancing at her phone. I approached the table. "Rosa?" She jumped slightly, then looked up at me. Recognition flashed in her eyes. "You look just like him," she said. "Except you look sharper." "I am Isabella," I said, pulling out a chair. "You said you worked for Evan?" "For 3 months," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I answered an ad on Craigslist, executive assistant and junior accountant for high-growth logistics startup. It sounded good. The pay was supposed to be $25 an hour." She laughed, a bitter, dry sound. "I never saw a dime of it. He kept saying the seed funding was clearing next week, then the week after." "Why are you contacting me?" I asked. Rosa reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out a silver USB drive. She placed it on the table and slid it across the wood toward me. "Because I saw the news," she said. "Well, not the news. I saw the police blotter. I have a friend in the clerk's office. She told me a report was filed against Evan Wells for identity fraud, and then I realized—" She swallowed hard. "I realized I might be an accessory if I did not say something." I looked at the drive. "What is on this?" "Everything," she said. "I was the one who managed the Dropbox. He thought because I was just a temp, I would not understand what I was looking at. But I am an accounting major. Isabella, I know what double books look like." She leaned in closer. "There are ghost employees," she said. "He has 5 people on the payroll who do not exist. He is writing checks to them, cashing them himself, and marking it as salary expense to lower the tax liability on the money he borrowed." "Stole," I corrected. "Stole," she agreed. "There are invoices from vendors that are literally just shell companies registered to his P.O. box, and there is a file in there called Investor Update Q3. It uses the logo of a real venture capital firm in Seattle. He used it to convince a private lender to give him a bridge loan." I took the USB drive. It felt cold in my hand. This was the smoking gun. This was not just credit card fraud. This was systemic, sophisticated financial crime. But there was one question that had been gnawing at me since the beginning. One shadow I could not quite illuminate. "My mother," I said. "Diane." Rosa flinched at the name. "What about her?" I asked. "She was there," Rosa said. "Every Tuesday and Thursday. She brought lunch. She sat in the conference room, which is just the dining room of their rental house, and they would go over the strategy." "Did she know about the credit cards?" I asked. "Did she know they were in my name?" Rosa looked down at her hands. She was twisting a silver ring on her finger. "She did not just know. Isabella," Rosa said softly. "It was her idea." The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. The library hum faded into a high-pitched ring in my ears. "What?" I whispered. "Evan was panicking about the audit from the vendor financing," Rosa said. "He was saying he was going to get caught. Your mother, she told him to calm down. She said, 'Isabella has clean credit. She has the trust fund history. If we put her name on the application, the algorithm will approve it instantly. She never checks her scores. By the time she notices, we will have flipped the inventory and paid it back.'" I felt sick, physically sick. I had thought my father was the silent partner, the enabler. I had thought Evan was the mastermind. But it was her. It was always her. "And the withdrawal?" I asked. "The medical letter?" Rosa looked up, her eyes wide with guilt. "I typed it," she confessed. "Your mother dictated it to me. She stood over my shoulder while I formatted it on the letterhead. She said, 'Make it sound clinical. Use words like dissociative and incapacitated.' She said if we could get you declared incompetent, she could apply for emergency guardianship. She said it was the only way to get access to the grandmother's trust to cover the hole in the accounts before the fiscal year ended. I sat back in my chair. It was not a rescue mission. It was not even a desperate family trying to cover up a mistake. It was a heist. My mother had planned to lobotomize my legal identity, strip mine my inheritance, and leave me a hollowed-out shell, all to save a company that didn't even exist. "I am sorry," Rosa said. Tears were welling in her eyes now. "I needed the job. I was scared of her. She can be very scary." "I know," I said. "I know she can." I stood up. I put the USB drive in my pocket. "You need to talk to the police," I said. "If you come forward voluntarily, if you act as a witness, my lawyer can ensure you get immunity, but if they find this on your laptop before you turn it over—" "I will testify," Rosa said immediately. "I just do not want to go to jail for them." "Call this number," I said, handing her Sarah Vance's card. "Do it today." I walked out of the library. The sky was gray, but everything looked incredibly sharp, as if the contrast on the world had been turned up. I went straight to Sarah's office. When she plugged the USB drive into her air-gapped laptop and opened the files, she let out a low whistle. "This is it," Sarah said. "This is the nail in the coffin. The fake investor updates alone are wire fraud. The payroll scheme is tax evasion and embezzlement, and the witness testimony regarding the guardianship plot, that is conspiracy to commit grand larceny." "What do we do?" I asked. "We stop playing defense," Sarah said. She picked up her phone. "I am calling the district attorney's office directly. We are bypassing the desk sergeant. This is now a priority case." She paused and looked at me. "And we are filing for a temporary restraining order. Today, within the hour. With this evidence, a judge will sign it ex parte. They will be legally barred from coming within 500 feet of you, your apartment, or the university campus." "Do it," I said. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, the TRO was signed. The legal machinery was turning, and that was when Evan realized the walls were closing in. I was walking back to my apartment from the legal office when my phone buzzed. It was a text from him. "You think you are smart? You think handing over a few files scares me? I know where you sleep. You ruin me. I ruin your degree. I will call the dean myself and tell them about the drugs you keep in your room. I will plant them if I have to." He was flailing. He was desperate. He was threatening to plant evidence. I did not reply. I did not get angry. I took a screenshot. I opened my email. I attached the screenshot. I sent it to Detective Miller, Sarah Vance, and the Campus Safety Dispatch. Subject: violation of TRO/witness intimidation/threat of planting evidence. 10 minutes later, Detective Miller replied, "Received. We are adding this to the warrant application. Do not engage." I was almost home when I saw it. A silver sedan parked across the street from the dormitory complex where I used to live before I got my apartment. It was my mother's car. She was standing on the sidewalk, pacing back and forth near the entrance to the quad. She was wearing sunglasses. Even though it was cloudy, she looked agitated, scanning the faces of every student who walked by. She was hunting for me. She didn't know I had moved off campus last year. She was waiting for me to come home from class so she could, beg, scream, force me into the car? I stopped behind a large oak tree, my heart pounding in my throat. Part of me, the child part, wanted to run, wanted to hide, but I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at the evidence file I had just sent. I dialed the number for campus safety. "This is Isabella Hayes," I said. "I have an active restraining order against Diane Wells. She is currently standing outside North Hall, attempting to intercept students. She is driving a silver Lexus, license plate number." I recited the number from memory. "We have the alert," the dispatcher said. "Officers are 2 minutes away. Stay in a safe location." I watched from behind the tree. 2 minutes later, a white campus safety SUV turned the corner, lights flashing silently. 2 uniformed officers stepped out. I saw my mother freeze. I saw her try to put on her respectable lady mask. I saw her gesture. probably explaining that she was just a mother waiting for her child. The officers were not having it. One of them pointed to the car. The other held a clipboard, likely the TRO notification that had been faxed over an hour ago. My mother started to argue. Her hands flew up in the air. The officer stepped closer, his hand resting near his belt. He said something short and sharp. My mother stopped. She looked around, her face pale. She got into her car. I watched her drive away, escorted by the patrol vehicle until she was off university property. She looked small. She looked defeated, but I knew better. She wasn't defeated yet. She was just retreating to regroup. I walked the rest of the way to my apartment. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I wedged a chair under the handle, just in case. I sat on the floor of my living room, the lights off, listening to the city sounds outside. I had not slept more than 4 hours in the last 2 days. My eyes burned. My body felt like it was vibrating with a mixture of caffeine and cortisol. But my mind was crystal clear. For years, I had walked through a fog of guilt, wondering why I wasn't good enough for them, wondering why I couldn't make them love me. Now the fog was gone. I didn't need their love. I needed their conviction numbers. I pulled my laptop onto my lap. To Rosa Grant. From Isabella Hayes. Subject: Thank you. I saw them. They are scared. Stay safe. We finish this on Monday. I closed the laptop. I was tired. God, I was so tired. But I wasn't weak. I was the storm they should have seen coming. The hearing for the temporary restraining order took place in Courtroom 4 of the Briar Glen County Courthouse. It was not the mahogany-paneled, high-ceilinged theater of justice I had seen in movies. It was a small, windowless room with beige walls, fluorescent lighting that hummed aggressively, and a smell that reminded me of the registrar's office, paper dust and anxiety. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Sarah Vance. She was wearing a suit that looked like armor, dark gray and immaculately tailored. On the table in front of us, there was no clutter, just a single 3-inch binder labeled Evidence. Across the aisle, my family sat with a lawyer they must have hired that morning. He looked disheveled, flipping through papers with the frantic energy of someone who had not been paid a retainer. My mother, Diane, was dressed in a soft powder blue cardigan. She had foregone her usual sharp jewelry for a simple pearl necklace. She looked small. She looked fragile. She looked like the perfect picture of a grieving, worried mother. Evan sat next to her, wearing a suit that was too shiny for a Tuesday morning. He was checking his watch every 30 seconds, tapping his foot. He looked annoyed, as if this hearing was a scheduling conflict that was keeping him from closing a major deal. My father was not there. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Hartman entered. She was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose and an expression of permanent, weary skepticism. She sat down, opened the file, and looked over her glasses at us. "We are here regarding the petition for a protective order filed by Miss Isabella Hayes against Diane Wells and Evan Wells," Judge Hartman said. "I have read the initial affidavit. Since the respondents are present, I will allow a brief statement before I rule." My mother's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we contest this order vigorously. This is a tragic misunderstanding within a loving family. Mrs. Wells is simply a mother who is deeply concerned for her daughter's mental health. There is no threat here, only love." Judge Hartman looked at my mother. "Mrs. Wells, you may speak." My mother stood up. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. Her voice trembled perfectly on the first syllable. "Your Honor," she began, looking not at the judge, but at me, her eyes pleading. "Isabella has always been high-strung. The pressure of that engineering program, it broke her. I received calls, disturbed calls. She was not making sense. I tried to withdraw her from school to bring her home, to get her the care she needs. I only wanted to save my child. And now she is doing this? It is the illness talking. She is paranoid. She thinks her own family is the enemy." She paused for effect, a single tear managing to escape down her cheek. "I just want to take her home," she whispered. Please, do not let her push us away. She is not well." I sat perfectly still. Under the table, my hands were clenched so tight my fingernails were digging into my palms. A week ago, this performance would have worked. It would have made me question my own sanity. I would have felt guilty, but today, I did not feel guilt. I felt the weight of the binder on the table. Sarah Vance stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not look at my mother. She looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," Sarah said, "we are not here to discuss emotions. We are here to discuss data." Sarah opened the binder. "The respondent claims my client is suffering from a mental health crisis that necessitated an emergency withdrawal," Sarah said. "She claims she acted out of concern. I would like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit A." Sarah handed a sheet of paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "This is a timeline of events from last Tuesday," Sarah continued. "At 10:15 in the morning, a user logged into the university portal to file the withdrawal. At that exact moment, Isabella Hayes was seated in advanced heat transfer, answering a question about thermal conductivity. We have the professor's attendance log and a time-stamped audio recording of the lecture." Sarah flipped a page. "At 10:30, Mrs. Wells called the dean's office claiming my client was non-responsive. At 10:32, my client was responding to a text message from her lab partner regarding a project due date. The syntax was perfect. The logic was sound. There was no crisis." Judge Hartman looked at the timeline, then at my mother. "Mrs. Wells," the judge said, "you submitted a medical document to support this withdrawal, a letter from a doctor, Evans." "Yes," my mother said, her voice gaining a little confidence. "Our family physician. He has treated Isabella since she was a child." "We checked the medical registry," Sarah interjected smoothly. "Doctor, Evans retired 4 years ago. The letterhead submitted to the university lists a clinic address that, according to Google Maps and city zoning records, is currently a vacant lot behind a gas station. The email domain used to send the letter was registered 24 hours prior to the submission." The courtroom went very quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to get louder. "Mrs. Wells?" Judge Hartman asked, her voice sharpening. "Can you tell me the current address of the clinic where you claim your daughter was treated?" My mother froze. She blinked rapidly. She looked at her lawyer, who was suddenly very interested in his own shoes. "I do not have the address on me," my mother stammered. "It is a new satellite office. I was so worried. I might have mixed up the paperwork." "You mixed up the existence of a doctor?" the judge asked. "It was a frantic morning," my mother snapped, the facade slipping. "I was trying to help her." "Let us move to the motivation," Sarah said. "If this was purely about health, Your Honor, one might ask why the respondents were also accessing financial data." Evans stood up then. He couldn't help himself. He smoothed his tie, flashing a winning smile at the judge. "Your Honor, if I may," Evans said, "this is where the misunderstanding lies. My sister and I have a family business arrangement. I run a venture capital-backed logistics firm. Isabella agreed to help with some of the credit structuring to build her own financial history. It is a standard family asset management strategy. She is just confused about the terms." "Confused," the judge repeated flatly. "Mr. Wells, why is your sister's name listed as the primary guarantor on a credit line for $42,000 that is currently in default?" "It is a bridge loan," Evans said, waving his hand dismissively. "We are closing a Series A round next week. The debt will be cleared. She knows that. She signed the documents." "Exhibit C," Sarah announced. She held up a document. It was a DocuSign audit trail. "This is the digital signature log for the credit application," Sarah said. "It was signed on November 14th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The geolocator places the signing device in Tacoma, Washington." Sarah pulled out another sheet. "On November 14th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Isabella Hayes was physically present in Briar Glen, Oregon, taking a midterm exam in fluid dynamics. We have the exam booklet, signed and proctored. Unless my client has the ability to be in 2 states at once, she did not sign that loan. Evan's smile faltered. She gave me permission verbally. She said I could sign for her. I did not, I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a bell. I did not know about the business, I said. I did not know about the loans. I did not know about the credit cards until I pulled my report 3 days ago. Evan turned to me, his face twisting into a sneer. You are lying. You are trying to ruin me because you are jealous. Mr. Wells, sit down, the judge ordered. And finally, Sarah said, we have the matter of the motive. Why go to such lengths? Why force a withdrawal? Why forge medical papers? Sarah gestured to the back of the room. I call Mr. Marcus Sterling, General Counsel for Redwood Valley University, to the stand. Mr. Sterling walked through the gate. He was a tall man with silver hair and the gravitas of someone who billed $800 an hour. He took the oath. Mr. Sterling, Sarah asked, can you confirm the university's interaction with Mrs. Wells regarding Isabella Hayes? I can, Sterling said. Mrs. Wells attempted to withdraw Miss Hayes and subsequently contacted our advancement office to request a change to a donor agreement. What kind of change? She requested that the naming rights for Innovation Hall be altered to include Mr. Evan Wells as a co-donor, Sterling said. My mother gasped. That was private. That was a confidential inquiry. There is no confidentiality for fraudulent misrepresentation, Sterling said calmly. Why is this relevant? The judge asked. Sterling turned to the judge. Because, Your Honor, the respondents seem to be operating under the impression that Miss Hayes is a dependent student relying on their support. They attempted to portray her as financially incompetent. The university feels it is necessary to correct the record to establish the extent of the attempted fraud. Sterling took a breath. Isabella Hayes is not a dependent student. She is the sole trustee of the Hayes-Wells Charitable Trust. She is the largest individual donor to Redwood Valley University in the last decade. She fully funded the construction of Innovation Hall. The respondents were attempting to attach their names to an asset they did not contribute a single cent toward. The silence that followed was absolute. It was not just quiet. It was a vacuum. My mother turned in her seat. She looked at me, but she did not look at me with anger, or even with the manipulative pity she had shown earlier. She looked at me as if she had never seen me before. For 24 years, she had looked at me and seen a tool, a sidekick, a background character in the movie of Evan's life. She saw someone she could bully, someone she could ignore, someone she could control. Now, for the first time, she saw the reality. She saw that while she was playing checkers with fake doctor's notes, I had been building an empire right under her nose. She saw that the power dynamic she thought existed, the rich parents and the needy student, was a delusion. I was the power. You, she whispered. You built the building? I looked her in the eye. Yes. But the money, she stammered. Grandmother's money. I thought it was gone. You thought you could steal it later, I said. I invested it. Evan looked like he had been slapped. The color drained from his face, the press release he wanted, the credibility he needed to save his scam. It was all based on a lie that I had just exposed in open court. Your Honor, Sarah Vance said, closing the binder. This is not a family dispute. This is a predation. The respondents forged documents to strip my client of her student status, presumably to trigger a conservatorship that would grant them control over the trust assets Mr. Sterling just mentioned. They are not concerned parents. They are failed thieves. Judge Hartman took off her glasses. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at my mother and Evan with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. In 20 years on the bench, Judge Hartman said, I have seen many things, but utilizing the mental health system to gaslight your own daughter for financial gain is a special kind of malice. She picked up her pen. The temporary restraining order is granted. The judge ruled. It is permanent for a period of 5 years. Mr. Wells, Mrs. Wells, You are to have no contact with the plaintiff. You are to stay 500 yards away from her residence, her place of employment, and the campus of Redwood Valley University. This includes electronic communication and communication through third parties. My mother started to sob. But this time, it was real. It was the sobbing of someone who realized the walls had truly closed in. Furthermore, Judge Hartman continued, her voice hard, given the evidence of identity theft, forgery of medical documents, and wire fraud presented here today, I am forwarding the transcript of this hearing and all exhibits to the District Attorney's Office with a recommendation for criminal investigation. No, my mother wailed. Please, he is just a boy. It was a mistake. It was a series of felonies, the judge said. Bailiff, please escort the respondents out. Miss Hayes, you may remain until they have vacated the building. The gavel came down. Bang. I watched them leave. Evan tried to look defiant, but his hands were shaking. My mother was leaning heavily on her lawyer, weeping about how she didn't know and how it wasn't supposed to be like this. They didn't look back at me. They couldn't. I sat there in the sudden quiet of the courtroom. Sarah Vance put a hand on my shoulder. We got it all, she said softly. The order, the referral, they cannot touch you now. I know, I said. I expected to feel a surge of triumph. I expected to feel like I had won a great victory, like the hero at the end of the movie who stands on the mountaintop. But I did not feel triumph. I felt relief. Yes, I felt a profound, deep exhale of breath that I had been holding for a week. But mostly, I just felt the cold, mechanical satisfaction of a system working exactly as it was designed to. They had tried to use chaos to control me. I had used order to stop them. I looked at the empty seats where my family had sat. They were just furniture now, empty chairs in an empty room. Are you ready to go? Sarah asked. Yes, I said. I stood up. I picked up my bag. I walked out of the courtroom. My heels clicking on the linoleum floor, I walked out into the hallway, past the other people waiting for their turn at justice. I walked out of the courthouse and into the daylight. The sun was finally breaking through the clouds. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and exhaust and wet pavement. I was an orphan now, in every way that mattered. I had no parents to call. I had no brother to rely on. But as I looked at the city stretching out before me, I realized something else. I was free. I checked my watch. It was 11:30. I had a fluid dynamics lab at 1 o'clock. I started walking toward campus. I had work to do. The machinery of the justice system is often criticized for being slow, but when you feed it the right fuel, clear evidence, a credible witness, and a high-profile victim, it moves with terrifying speed. Following the restraining order hearing, the district attorney did not hesitate. The charges came down like a hammer, not just on Evan, but on the entire family unit that had operated as a criminal enterprise. The indictment was a laundry list of white-collar sins: 3 counts of identity theft, 2 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of forgery of medical documents, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. For Evan, the situation was even bleaker. Based on the files Rosa had provided, the state opened a parallel investigation into securities fraud. It turned out that lying to your sister is a family matter. But lying to investors about non-existent assets is a federal offense. Rosa Grant was the key. She met with the prosecution 3 times in the first week. In exchange for full immunity, she handed over everything: the chat logs, where my mother dictated the fake medical letter, the payroll spreadsheets that showed Evan paying himself a salary from my credit line, and the emails where they discussed how long they could keep me sedated or compliant once they got me home because of the restraining order. They could not contact me. They could not show up at my door to beg, scream, or manipulate. The silence from their end was legally enforced. But that did not mean they stopped trying to reach me. They just used proxies. My phone became a lightning rod for guilt trips from people I barely knew. A second cousin sent a Facebook message saying I was destroying the family legacy. A neighbor from back home emailed my university address. telling me my mother had fainted at the grocery store from stress and that I should be ashamed. I did not reply. I forwarded every single communication to Detective Miller to be added to the harassment file. Then came the call from my father. He was smart enough not to use his own phone. He called the landline of the engineering department's front desk, claiming to be a vendor with an urgent delivery question for Isabella Hayes. The secretary, not knowing the list of prohibited contacts, put him through to the lab where I was working. "This is Isabella," I answered, expecting a supplier. "Isabella." The voice was quiet. It was small. It was the voice of a man who had realized too late that his passivity was not a shield, but a weapon he had helped wield. "Dad," I said. I did not hang up immediately. I signaled to my lab partner to start recording on his phone. "Isabella, the police were here this morning," he said. "They took the computers. They took your mother's iPad. They took Evan's files." "I know," I said. I authorized the warrant application. "Con," he stammered, using the affectionate term he hadn't used in years, before switching back to English, his voice cracking. "Are you really going to go through with this? Are you really going to send your mother and brother to prison over money?" I stood there in the lab, surrounded by the hum of servers and the smell of ozone. I thought about the credit report. I thought about the fake doctor. I thought about the way he had sat in that coffee shop and told me I was embarrassing the family while they robbed me blind. "It is not about the money, Dad," I said. "Then what is it?" he asked. "We can pay you back. I will sell the house. I will fix it. Just drop the charges. Please, you are destroying us." "I am not destroying you," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I am just letting the consequences find you. Isabella, please," he begged. "We are family." "I went through with this the moment you stayed silent," I said. "You watched them steal my name. You watched them plan to lock me away, and you said nothing because it was easier for you. You are not a victim. Dad, you are an accomplice." I hung up the phone. I sent the recording to the detective. That was the last time I ever spoke to my father. The criminal trial 2 months later was not the dramatic showdown I had seen on television. It was a sterile, brutal dismantling of their lies, because the evidence was so overwhelming. The defense strategy collapsed almost immediately. Their initial plan, I learned later, was to present a united front. It was all a misunderstanding, a family arrangement gone wrong. But narcissists have a fatal flaw. They are loyal only to themselves. When the pressure mounts, when the ship starts to sink, they do not hold hands. They climb over each other to get to the lifeboat. The prosecutor played the audio of my mother dictating the medical letter. The courtroom listened to her voice, sharp and commanding, instructing Rosa to use words like incapacitated. My mother's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client was acting under the direction of her son. Evan Wells told her that this was necessary to save the business. She is an elderly woman who was manipulated by a young man she trusted." I watched Evan from across the aisle. His head snapped toward his mother. His eyes bulged. "That is a lie," Evan shouted, ignoring his own attorney's attempt to silence him. "She came up with the idea. She told me Isabella had the trust fund. I did not even know about the grandmother's money until she told me we could tap into it. She is the one who set up the iPad." "You ungrateful child," my mother shrieked, standing up. "I did everything for you. I ruined my relationship with my daughter for you. And now you blame me?" "You controlled everything," Evan yelled back. "You made me sign the checks." The judge banged the gavel, but the damage was done. The jury looked at them, a mother and son tearing each other apart, trading accusations, revealing the rotten core of their dynamic. They weren't a family. They were a viper's nest. In that moment, I felt the final weight lift off my chest. I had spent my whole life thinking I was the problem. I thought I was the one who couldn't fit in, the one who was too cold, too distant. But looking at them now, screaming at each other while the bailiffs moved to restrain them, I realized the truth. I wasn't the problem. I was the escapee. The plea deals came down 3 days later. They knew they had lost. To avoid a lengthy trial and the maximum sentence, they accepted the state's offer. Evan pleaded guilty to felony identity theft and wire fraud. He was sentenced to 36 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. He was ordered to pay full restitution of $62,000, though I knew I would never see a dime. The conviction effectively banned him from ever holding a director position in a public company or obtaining a business loan again. His career was over before it began. My mother pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery because of her age and lack of prior record. She avoided prison time, but the sentence was still a leash. She received 5 years of strict probation, 500 hours of community service, and a permanent criminal record. But the part of the sentence that mattered most to me was the protective order. The judge made the restraining order permanent. 99 years. They were legally erased from my life. My father was not charged, but he lost everything else to pay for the legal fees and the restitution Evan owed. They had to sell the house in Tacoma. The house where I grew up, the house where they had plotted against me, was sold to strangers. The day after the sentencing, I went to the bank. I sat down with a new financial advisor. We changed everything. We dissolved the old trust structures and built new ones with layers of encryption and security that required biometric verification. I changed my social security number, a rare and difficult process that the state granted because of the severity of the familial fraud. I changed my name legally, dropping Wells entirely and taking my grandmother's maiden name. I closed the unauthorized accounts. I disputed the credit hits. I scrubbed the stain of their greed from my financial soul. 2 months later, spring had returned to Briar Glen. I stood at the podium in the main auditorium of the engineering department. I was wearing my best suit. Behind me, a projection screen displayed the title of my senior thesis, Optimizing Thermal Conductivity in Microgrid Systems. I presented my work. I answered the questions from the faculty panel. I spoke with the confidence of someone who had survived a war and knew that nothing a professor could ask would ever be as scary as seeing my own mother try to erase my identity. When I finished, the department head, Dr. Aris, the same man who had watched me run out of his class that rainy Tuesday, stood up. "Excellent work. Miss Hayes," he said. Or should I say, Ms. Vance? I smiled. Vance is fine. I walked out of the auditorium and across the campus. The sun was shining. The azaleas were in bloom. I walked to Innovation Hall. I stood in the lobby. The light streamed through the glass walls, illuminating the modern steel and concrete. I walked over to the donor wall. The plaque had been updated. It no longer said anonymous. It read, "Generously endowed by Isabella Vance, for those who build their own future." I touched the letters. They were cool and solid under my fingertips. My mother had wanted this name off the wall. She had wanted to replace it with the name of a thief, but the name remained. It was a boundary. It was a declaration. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was an email. From Apex Meridian Systems, HR. Subject: Offer of Employment, Senior Systems Engineer. Dear Ms. Vance, we are pleased to offer you the position. I read the salary. It was more money than my father had made in 10 years. It was a job in a city 2,000 miles away, in a secure facility where background checks were mandatory and unauthorized visitors were stopped at the gate by armed guards. It was perfect. I looked at my phone one last time. There were no missed calls, no texts from unknown numbers, no flying monkeys. The silence was absolute. For a long time, I thought peace meant forgiveness. I thought it meant sitting down at a table and making nice, pretending the hurt hadn't happened. I thought it meant letting them back in. But standing there in the building I built, holding the future I earned, I understood the truth. Peace is not forgiveness. Peace is security. Peace is knowing that the people who want to hurt you can no longer reach you. Peace is closing the door, locking the deadbolt, and walking away without looking back. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked out of the glass doors and into the rest of my life. I was alone, and it was wonderful. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was a heavy one, but I hope it brings some satisfaction to anyone who has ever had to fight for their own independence. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please comment down below with your country or city. Let's see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this journey of justice, please subscribe to the channel Kate Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this video get recommended to more people who need to hear it. Your support means the world to me. Stay strong and protect your peace.